What is up, everybody? It's your boy Nutty Rich here, back on the Nutty Rich channel. I'm sorry that the Dexter review series has been slow. I am gonna get back into working on that, but anyway, let's get into this video. Today we'll be talking about Dexter Season 2. So, Dexter Season 2 takes place immediately after Dexter Season 1, with, spoiler for the end of Season 1, Dexter has successfully killed his older brother, Brian Moser, who ends up being the ice truck killer. And he successfully was able to catch him and kill him because he was trying to take out Debs, and also he was just killing a bunch of people. And now Dexter is trying to get back his life back together, but it's hard because not only did he kill the one only person that truly cared about Dexter, but also cared about Dexter the way that he is as a serial killer and somebody who understands that being in that lifestyle. But of course, and eventually lead Dexter trying to, continue his life as a serial killer, but also trying to still be somewhat of a family man. But unfortunately, that comes to a head because of the fact of two situations starts happening that will change Dexter in this entire season. Number one is Dokes is now officially on his trail, and Dokes is literally, throughout the entire season, is going after Dexter because he has a funny feeling that the Ice Drug Killer and Dexter were connected, and he doesn't realize how right he was until way later on in the season. So they end up having their last part of their rivalry happen in this season. And then, of course, you have the Bay Harbor Butcher case finally becoming a reality because of the single fact of Dexter, in the events of season 1, threw all his murder tools because he thought he was going to get caught, but then he ended up finding out he didn't. So unfortunately, a bunch of scuba divers able to find his burial grounds along with his tools, and now they are actively searching for his new nickname for the rest of the show and the rest of this franchise. The Bay Harbor Butcher case is now officially on, to the point where they have to get a specialist in hunting down serial killer named Frank Lundy. And basically throughout the entire season, you have Dokes, Lundy are the main two, are actively going after Dexter, but Dexter also has another problem that shows up because of the fact that Dokes was so much on his ass that he ends up pretending to go to rehab, which ultimately led to the character known as Lila. Lila, throughout this entire season, is technically our main villain of the season. I'm putting air quotes because it's not really a true traditional killer or villain in here. Yes, she does a lot of terrible things to multiple characters. She does a lot of terrible things to Dexter, especially Rita, and everything that goes along with that. So there's a lot going on. Plus, Rita in the background is dealing with the last bit of Paul's stuff, because, Paul is able to piece together Dexter was the reason why he went to jail in the last season. So now he's trying his best to try to get Rita on his side in order to try to help him get out of jail. But that whole thing is going on. Now, let's go over the positive and negative of the season. The positive is that I really do like this season a lot. I think this is a great season. I like the fact that they are hunting down Dexter, even though they don't know for sure it's Dexter. But I like that throughout the entire season, we have Dexter trying everything in his power to get around everybody, because he knows that at any moment he could easily get caught, and that this whole thing could come to a head, and then Dexter would obviously go to prison. But of course, as all of this is going on, he has so many other things he has to deal with as well. Not only that, he has Paul, it's still in the background, he has Rita, but then you have Lila and Dokes. Now, of course, Dokes is, his main antagonist, because of the fact that Dokes is the only one on the Miami Metro really going after Dexter and kind of figures out, there's something really off about him. And then, of course, they have their final confrontation of the season, which is honestly one of my favorite final confrontation. And Lila, throughout the entire season, is a good second, second-ish, kind of main-ish villain. She is really good in this season. I like her femme fatale. I like that she manipulates people, and that she really does a lot of damage to Dexter's personal life that will play into other parts of the season. And they do a really good job with it. The biggest thing I dislike about this season, for my negative, is that I truly hate the fact that this feels like the end of show season. This is the type of season you expect to have at the end of a show like this, because of the single fact that finally going after the main killer himself, being Dexter, of course. And of course, we know that nothing bad can happen to him because we know there's other seasons, and we knew Dexter gonna have to find some magical way to get out of this in order to keep the series going for like a couple more seasons. And it's just sad because there are characters in here that should definitely be in the later part of the show, but unfortunately they won't be for obvious reasons. And that is one of the big weaknesses about the season that I really dislike, is because this should have definitely been used a lot later in the show. We still could have all the other seasons leading into this season, and it would have been easily a perfect wrap up season to end everything off. But unfortunately, they didn't. So overall, I do generally like the season. Again, I love that they're finally chasing Dexter. I like that Dexter is more on his toes throughout this entire season. I like Lila, I like Dokes, and I just love all the stuff that really started to get Dexter. And ultimately, it's a good thing. I'm not the biggest fan of what happened at the end of the season because of just something that happened that would change the entire show forever. But overall, I still think this is a great season of Dexter. And yeah, so if you haven't seen the season, that's it. Highly recommend it. Let's get to the characters. Alright, so now we're to the character portion of Dexter season 2. So of course we have Dexter. So throughout the entire season, this is takes place literally after the events of season 1. So spoiler for season 1, he ends up killing his brother, being the ice truck killer. So now Dexter is just trying to get his life back together, and of course he did help Rita get rid of Paul. But throughout the season, Paul is trying to convince Rita that, Dexter is the one who put him in jail, so Dexter is trying to keep Paul out of the way, while he's also trying to still continue to be, a serial killer and stuff like that. But of course, Rita is constantly on him because he's constantly gone all the time, and she's like, "Look, how are you always gone? You're supposed to be helping me with the kids, because they really love you and stuff like that. You're supposed to be there for us, but you're always busy doing stuff." And of course, at this time, he's also have Doxus on him, so he ends up joining a rehab group for like addicts, because Rita thinks that he's an addict, which we know he's not. So he ends up getting dokes off his tracks. But as all of this is going on, he also has the Big Harbor Butcher stuff is starting to go down because they end up finding his dumping ground for his body, and now they have Special Agent Lundy after him. So now Dexter, throughout the entire season, is trying to not get caught with that, but also trying to keep Dokes up and try to keep up appearances with Rita. So Dexter has a lot going on within this season, and he's just trying to keep himself out of jail as much as possible. And again, I love that him and Dokes had this whole big rivalry throughout this entire season, and it's honestly one of my favorite showdown between these two in the entire series. And of course, he also gets into it with the character Lila, and the only reason why I'm revealing her early is because of the fact that she gets introduced so early. Because at first she's not really important, but then she slowly becomes important, and one of these weird seasons where there's not really a big killer like the majority of the show. It's just like more antagonists. But you'll see when I do another video on that. Next character would be Dokes himself. Now again, I love Dokes. Dokes is such a great character because once he started to realize something was off with Dexter right from the start, he was always had suspicion. But after the whole ice truck killer thing and how Dexter was able to read all the signs and everything of the ice truck killer, he thought it was very weird. And then of course, Dexter disappeared in the middle of the investigation. Of course, we know Dexter ultimately kills the truck killer, and of course he was there to save Deb, and of course he's like, "Oh, how are you even here? How do you even know where to go?" and all this other stuff. So of course, eventually, Doak started following him around, and to the point where Dexter's like, "Hey, why do you keep following me?" He's like, "Oh, I'm pretty sure you have something to do with the ice truck killer, but I have no solid proof, but I'm gonna spend the rest of this time going after you." And of course, that's what makes Doak so interesting. And of course, we get to learn a little bit more about him as the season goes along. And of course, their big moment happens at the end of the season. But of course, if you've seen the season, you know what happens to Dokes. But for the other people who don't know, I'm not going to spoil it here. But definitely, Dexter was such a great character. And that's all I really got to say. There's a lot more I can say about him, but that's a lot of spoilers. Next character will be, of course, Deb. Deb this season is, of course, now she's finally in Miami Metro because everything that happened with the previous case with the ice truck killer. Of course, in the last season, spoilers, she was dating him and she was about to get married to him, but of course, that was left and he was trying to force Dexter to kill her, but of course, we know Dexter didn't kill Debs, and you know, now she's dealing with that, so she's trying to rebound off of Special Agent Lundy. They end up having their whole little romance throughout this season, and it's a little weird, but at the same time, at least they're both adults. And of course, Dev is trying to fight to become a detective throughout this season and also into next season as well. And I do love that we do get to still see more of her investigation side because she's able to figure a lot of things out throughout the season. And I like that this is going to be one of the last seasons that it actually feels more natural. And I like that, she does have a relationship with Dokes. Her and Dokes are like really close, especially more in this season as well. And I like that she's slowly getting used to every member of the Miami Metro team. She is such a fun character throughout this entire season. And of course, her lover through the season, Special Agent Lundy. So of course, Lundy is introduced into the season because of course they found Dexter's burial ground. So of course he is called in to track down the now dubbed Bay Harbor Butcher, while Dexter is trying everything in his power to keep them off of his case. And Lundy is a rock star in their field because of the fact that he's able to find serial killers. He's able to figure out serial killers. But he does get a little distracted because his relationship with Deb. And of course, every time he's getting closer to figure out is Dexter, something gets in the way. And that is a lot that he has to do throughout the entire season. But he is kind of one of the more disappointing characters because of the fact he starts out very strong this season. But I'll talk more about him in a later time. But overall, he was just a good character. I wish that him and Dexter had a little bit more scenes together, especially since he's literally hunting Dexter without knowing. And of course, the next character will actually be Rita. Rita, throughout this entire season, is the catalyst of why a lot of the stuff happens. Of course, Dexter himself, but because she assumed that Dexter was an addict, just like her ex-husband Paul, who's in jail throughout this entire season after the event that happened to him in season one, and she believes that Dexter's an addict and everything, but of course we know Dexter isn't. But Dexter doesn't want to reveal that he's a serial killer to her because obviously she would probably try to go and get him in jail and everything, and that's going to blow his whole cover. So of course they beefing back and forth, and that ultimately leads into Dexter going to rehab and then meeting whole thing. I might be butchering the girl's name, but anyway, so that and then they have their little beef. She has her beef with her and everything like that. It's a whole big mess when it comes to this entire season, and this is where she's really like really getting on Dexter on a lot of things. But I am a little bit more on her side this season because of the fact of Dexter can't be honest with her and he doesn't even give her like any good excuses, so that I do agree like Dexter is doing a little bit too much, but we as the audience know why. And the last character I'm going to talk about for this season is Lila. Um, she is of course at first we see her at the beginning of the season. She's not really a nothing character until her and Dexter start talking, and she ends up becoming Dexter's sponsor because Dexter throughout the season is trying to control his dark side, and he's using her to help her, and for the most part he's doing a great job of controlling it because of her throughout this entire season. But as they start to get more closer and closer, eventually that leads into a lot of things that are causing a lot more issue with Rita and so many other characters in Miami Metro, and of course that ends up leading into the back half of the season with them. And she is definitely a very interesting character because of the fact she is very manipulating. She's knows how to control the situation very well, and it's kind of messed up because it's like Dexter is just trying to do good for the people that he cares about, but also still trying to follow Harry's code. but she just constantly gets in the way, and she causes a ton of problem for a bunch of characters. And she does do something very unforgivable this season, and that definitely changed the entire show because of her actions. But I can't spoil what happened. But if you know, please leave that in the comment. Make sure you say spoilers if you want to discuss that in the comments. But overall, that is it when it comes to the character portion. Yeah, this video is a lot longer because there's a lot to say more, because now we're really starting to get the character. There's a whole lot of other characters I could talk about, but I'm going to start trimming down the fat when it comes to characters. Unless they have like a big storyline, then I will touch more on it. But overall, I really did enjoy this season. This is a very fun season of Dexter. If you haven't seen Dexter season 2, I highly recommend seeing it. And I do agree with a lot of the criticism of the season. This season should have been the final season of the show because it just makes logical sense. But they decided not to go with that. So unfortunately, that is where that's where we left off. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe as always. I will catch you guys later. And yeah, love and peace.